11 kinds of used boat I would walk away from at the Marina, what each one actually costs you after the handshake, and how to spot every one of them in about 20 minutes with a flashlight, a stubby screwdriver, and your own knuckles. That is the whole deal, and I am going to hand it over in the order you would meet them walking the docks on a Saturday. Not the obvious wrecks, the clean ones, the ones with the fresh wax and the printed folder of receipts and the seller who says all the right things, because the boats that empty a bank account are never the boats that look like they will. I have pulled a lot of these apart. Enough transoms out of enough hulls to know that the rot is almost never where the crack is, and enough exhaust manifolds off enough small block V8s to know that the ones that kill an engine look perfect from the outside. That is the pattern underneath every item on this list. On a boat, the parts that end you are the parts nobody can see, and the parts nobody can see are the ones the builder buried under something you have to destroy to reach. So here is what I am promising you. Number 4 is a whole category of boat where the drive unit bolted to the transom comes from a company that stopped existing in 2000, and the price tag looks like a gift right up until you need one specific gear. Number 7 is the one that gets people killed, or gets them a bill in the low 4 figures for a part that costs about $300, depending on which way the luck falls. And number 9 is a boat where somebody already spent $7,000 fixing the exact problem you are looking at, and made it worse. One thread runs through all of it. Every boat on this list is not bad because it is old. Old is fine. Old is often better. It is bad because of access, because the thing that failed is welded, glassed, foamed, or bonded into a place where getting to it costs more than the part ever will. That is the number you have to learn to see. The asking price is the smallest figure in the deal, and every seller on that dock knows it. Number 1, the Saltwater sterndrive with the original exhaust manifolds and risers. This one is first because it is the most common expensive mistake in the whole used market, and because the seller is usually not lying to you. He genuinely thinks low hours means a healthy engine. On a gas sterndrive in saltwater, hours are close to irrelevant. Here is what is happening in there. A marine exhaust manifold has 2 passages separated by a thin wall of cast iron. On one side, exhaust gas coming off the head. On the other, raw seawater being pumped through to keep the whole thing cool enough that it does not set a fiberglass boat on fire. Salt water on one side, roughly 1-200 degree exhaust gas on the other. Cast iron does not enjoy that. It corrodes from the inside, where nobody looks, the wall gets thin, and one day a pinhole opens. Then salt water goes into the exhaust stream, back through an open exhaust valve, and sits on top of a piston. Freshwater manifolds often go 10 to 15 years. In hot salt water, they rarely make it past 7, and plenty fail at 4 or 5. Nobody can look at these and tell you. There is no practical, conclusive way to judge the internal condition of a manifold. You can pull them, clean them, even pressure test them, and still have no guarantee they will not leak shortly after. Which means the only real information is a date on a receipt, not hours, a date. The arithmetic is brutal and simple. A full manifold and riser set for a V8 runs roughly $1,400 to $2,800 installed. And waiting until the engine drinks, the water pushes the repair past $8,000. So a 12-year-old sterndrive with original exhaust on the coast is not a bargain with a maintenance item due. It is a boat with a live grenade and a pin that has already started to move. What to do on the dock? Ask for the date the manifolds and risers were last replaced. If the answer is a shrug, Look for rust weeping at the seam where the riser meets the manifold, which is the classic tell, and price the job into your offer as if it is due tomorrow, because it is. And pull the dipstick after the sea trial. If there is any milky look to that oil at all, put your hands in your pockets and go get lunch somewhere else. Which brings up the thing that makes the next one different. That engine problem is expensive, but it is bolt-on work. The next one is not work at all. It is surgery. Number 2, the boat with a soft transom. Take the flashlight and get behind the drive, or behind the outboard. You are looking at the joint where the motor mounts to the hull, and you are looking for hairline cracks radiating out from the mounting bolts or across the top corners. Most of those cracks mean the wood inside is wet. Almost every fiberglass boat built through the 90s has a plywood core sandwiched inside that transom, and the moment water finds a path in, usually an old bolt hole for a transducer that somebody sealed with the wrong stuff, the plywood starts turning to compost in the dark. The test costs nothing. Get someone to trim the outboard all the way up while you rest a hand flat on the inside of the transom. Any flex, any working, any creak. Then take the butt of the screwdriver and tap your way across it. Solid laminate rings, wet core thuds, and you will hear the change instantly the first time you hear it. And here is the real reason this one is on the list. If the transom has rot, the stringers very likely have the same rot, because whatever water got in has been running downhill for years. Shop pricing on a transom alone tends to land in the low thousands, and once you are into stringers and deck, it stops being a repair and becomes a rebuild that runs past what the boat is worth. That is not a negotiating point. That is a different hobby. Number 3, the spongy sole and the wet cord deck. Walk the deck in bare feet or soft shoes, deliberately, along the outboard edges rather than down the middle, and stand on the spots right beside every cleat, every rail base, every hatch corner. Those are where the fasteners went through the core. Most boat decks use a balsa or foam core between 2 skins of glass for stiffness without weight, and a poorly sealed fitting lets water in until the core saturates and you get soft spots. Now I want to be careful here, because this is where the used market panics and the panic costs people good boats. Wet is not the same as dead. End grain balsa can be thoroughly saturated and still hold most of its compressive strength. The real concern with any core is delamination, the skins separating from the core. And surveyors genuinely disagree about how much a moisture meter is telling you. Some treat a high reading as a walkaway. Others say the meter demands care and experience and should almost be the last tool that comes into play. I lean toward the second group, and I will tell you why. I have tapped decks that read soaking and rang like a bell, and I have found mush under a reading that looked fine. So use your ears and your feet first, and the meter second. What you are hunting is the combination. A high reading plus a dull thud plus visible flex. That is a recore, and recoring is measured in shop hours per square foot, which is a polite way of saying you will not like the number. Number 4, the boat with an orphaned drive. Now the one I flagged. There is a whole shelf of the used market, roughly 1986 through the late 90s, where the stern drive hanging off the transom is an OMC Cobra or King Cobra. OMC redesigned their stern drive after certain Volvo patents expired and called it the Cobra, with the first units shipping in 1985. These are all over the inland lakes. They are cheap, and some of them run beautifully. The catch is the parent company. OMC closed its business and sold off the rights to its products, and that was a quarter century ago. What that means in practice is that consumables and common wear parts are still out there through aftermarket and salvage channels, and the specific internal gear or electrical component you actually need may not be. And when you find one, you pay whatever the man who has it decides to charge. The same story is now running in slower motion on a much newer set of boats. And this is the part I want you to sit with. Evinrude stopped manufacturing outboards on May 27, 2020, when BRP discontinued a 113-year-old brand. The company said the outboard business had been hit hard by the pandemic and that its hand had been forced. To their credit, they did not just vanish. BRP committed to continuing to supply service parts to customers and dealers and to honoring manufacturer warranties. But commitments have shapes. The support window runs to roughly 2030, and support means orders get filled when they can, rather than every part number sitting on a shelf, with the inventory thinning since 2022. Here is the part nobody puts in the listing. Parts are the smaller half of the problem. The bigger half is that dealer expertise fades as technicians move to other brands, and finding a shop that is genuinely fluent in diagnosing those engines gets harder. A modern outboard is a computer with a propeller on it. An orphaned computer with nobody left who speaks its language is a very different ownership experience than the same hull with a current engine on the back, and the price difference between those two boats is almost never big enough to cover it. Am I telling you never to buy one? No. If you are handy, if you have found the one independent guy in your county who lives for these, and if the discount is real, it can be the best value on the water. Just buy it knowing the clock is running, not because you thought you got away with something. 4 items in, and you can already see the shape of this. Every one of them is a boat where the failure is normal, predictable, and priced into nothing. From here, it gets less mechanical and more human, because the next few are boats where somebody has made a decision about what you get to know. And number 7 is where that turns into a fuel leak under your feet. Number 5. The boat you are not allowed to sea trial. Short one, and the shortest item on this list for a reason. There is no version of this that is acceptable. Not the trailer is at his brother's. Not it is winterized. Not the batteries are out of it. Running an engine on a garden hose proves nothing. It proves it starts. You need to run the boat at wide open throttle for a few minutes and watch the tachometer against the manufacturer's specified range, because an engine with a tired water pump or corroded cooling passages overheats at full throttle, and no seller gets to tell you that is normal. Under load, in the water, trimmed out. Anything less, and you are buying a story. Number 6. The freshly detailed boat. New carpet. New batteries. Bottom paint so fresh you could get it on your thumb. Interior that smells strongly of something clean. I love a well-kept boat. What I do not love is a boat where every single thing you can see is new and nothing you cannot see has been touched, because that is a signature. And once you know it, you cannot unsee it. Fresh bottom paint hides blisters and hides repairs. New carpet hides a soft sole. A heavy smell of cleaner hides the smell of a boat that has been full of water. Storm boats are the sharp end of this. When an insurer declares a boat a total loss after storm or flood damage, the state may issue a branded title, and that branding stays in the vessel's history to alert future buyers. That is the system working. The system does not always work, and the branding rules for boats vary by state in ways that make a car title look tidy by comparison. So do what the flood car people do, because it transfers exactly, Stains, mildew, rust, and discoloration are the signs. You look under the floor coverings and in the places nobody bothers to clean. And a strong smell of disinfectant is a red flag rather than a green one. Pull a hatch nobody expects you to pull. Reach up under the gunnel where a rag has never been. If you find silt, you have found everything you need. You are still here. So let me put the one useful thing in the middle of this rather than saving it for the end. Everything on this list is spotted by looking where the seller did not clean. That is the whole skill. If this is the kind of straight arithmetic you want more of, subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it is how these keep finding you. Because the next one is the item I flagged at the start, and it is the only entry on this list that can actually hurt you rather than just cost you. Number 7. The boat with a buried fuel tank. 2 versions of this, and both of them live under a deck that has to be cut open. Version 1 is the older fiberglass tank, and it is a genuine piece of history that caught a generation of boat owners flat. Builders made tanks out of glass and resin because they do not corrode. Then ethanol arrived in the pump fuel. When E10 came into widespread use in the northeastern states, the effects were immediate. Engines stalled and failed, fuel lines deteriorated, and fiberglass tanks disintegrated. Boats with older fiberglass tanks suffered engine damage because dissolved resin compounds carried through the filters and deposited on intake valves. To be precise about the mechanism, because it matters, it is not the glass that dissolves. It is the resin that holds the fibers together, which is worse because the tank goes soft, while the sludge goes downstream into your engine. If a boat from the 70s or 80s has a tank glassed into the hull structure, that is not a feature to admire. Walk. Version 2 is more common and quieter. Smaller boats and center consoles very often carry an aluminum tank foamed in place under the deck, and no matter how well the compartment is sealed, water eventually gets between the foam and the tank and pinholes the aluminum over time. Gasoline then seeps into flotation foam in a closed compartment in the middle of your boat. I am not going to dress that up. Fuel vapor is heavier than air. It collects in the lowest place it can find, and it does not need much of an ignition source. Sniff the bilge before you start anything, every time, on any boat you're looking at. And the pinhole gives you almost no warning. There is a well-documented account of a tank pulled from an older hull that was sitting half full with no fuel smell and no visible leakage at all. The pinhole only showed up on a pressure test in the bottom at the aft end, and the lesson drawn from it was that no fuel leakage does not rule out significant corrosion, with long-term half-full storage encouraging the water accumulation that caused it. Half full over the winter. That is all it took. The bill is where this becomes a walk-away rather than a negotiation. Quite often, the deck has to be cut open to reach and replace a tank, and the foam has to come out with it because it is now saturated with fuel. Yard pricing for a tank replacement commonly lands in the $3,000 to $5,000 range, and I have seen bigger boats go well past that. The tank itself is the cheap part. The access is the whole invoice. Number 8. The paperwork boat. This is the one that catches the careful buyer because it has nothing to do with the boat. The hull can be perfect and you can still lose it. 2 separate problems. First, identity. The hull identification number on the transom has to match every document in that folder, and the documents have to match each other. A mismatch is not a clerical quirk. Second, and this is the one people miss entirely, encumbrances. If the boat is federally documented rather than state registered, the certificate you are being shown tells you nothing about debt. A Coast Guard certificate of documentation does not reveal liens or encumbrances. Those are recorded on the vessel's underlying abstract of title as preferred mortgages or notices of claim of lien. That abstract is the only record that gives a complete synopsis of ownership, transfers, mortgages, and lien recordings. So you order one, and it is not expensive. And it generally takes a couple of business days to process. If it does not come back showing that old mortgage satisfied, you are not buying a boat. You are buying somebody else's loan with a boat attached. I will be straight that I am a hands and tools guy rather than a maritime lawyer, and the lien priority rules in this corner of the law are genuinely strange. The same statutes that cover a 1,000-foot tanker also cover a 30-foot cruiser. That is exactly why I do not freelance on it. I pull the abstract, and if anything on it is unclear, somebody who does this for a living reads it before money moves. 2 more, and they are the 2 where the previous owner already tried to fix the problem. Watch how that goes. Number 9, the boat whose blisters were already repaired. Bottom blisters on an older fiberglass hull are mostly a cosmetic and value problem rather than a structural emergency. And I want to say that clearly because the word osmosis makes people run. Water works through the gel coat, reacts in the laminate, and lifts little domes. Warm water accelerates it, and the blisters can grow to the size of dinner plates. The trap is not the blistered boat, it is the fixed one. Here is the rule that gets ignored constantly, including by yards. A hull has to be genuinely dry before an epoxy barrier coat goes on, or the problem is simply sealed in. And because blistering is a sign of advanced osmosis, applying a barrier coat after they appear only makes things worse. Drying a saturated hull takes months, not a long weekend. And months of yard time is money nobody wants to spend before a sale. There is a well-known case history of an owner who moved a cool water boat to hot water, watched a few hundred blisters become thousands, took 3 estimates, and paid $7,000 for an epoxy repair with a 5-year guarantee. It came back, so when a seller tells you the bottom was done, the follow-up question is not who did it. It is how long the hull sat drying and what the moisture readings were before the coating went on. If there is no answer, you are looking at a bottom that is worse than the one that was blistered, because now it is blistered under a seal. Number 10. The boat priced as if a repower were cheap. The last one is arithmetic rather than a defect, and it is the mistake I see good, careful buyers make. Tired engine, honest seller, price reflects it, and the buyer runs the numbers on the engine sticker. The sticker is roughly half the story. Budget $15,000 to $18,000 for a Yamaha or Mercury at 150 horsepower. And that is a full job, engine plus rigging, not a motor in a crate. On a twin-engine boat, a pair of 250 to 300 horsepower 4-strokes installed runs roughly $48,000 to $80,000, where engine-only quotes are $36,000 to $60,000, so the rigging and labor are a serious chunk. Then add what the shop finds when the old motor comes off the transom, because that is precisely where number 2 on this list lives. Do the repower math before you make the offer, not after. Buying plus repowering has to land under comparable boats with healthy power, with margin left over. If it does not, the discount was never a discount. Now the part I have been building toward, and it is not about a boat at all. It is about what you are allowed to know when you buy someone else's engine. Between 2000 and 2005, a very large number of 4-stroke outboards went out into the world with a marketing promise attached. And it was a good one, because the engines were good, reliability, durability, Yamaha advertised its outboards as high-power engines with unmatched reliability and durability. If you own a boat from that era, or you're about to look at one this weekend, this is your engine family. Then owners started finding something, not on the outside. Class action filings alleged a defect in the coating of internal aluminum exhaust components, letting hot gases corrode the exhaust passages until holes opened, with loss of power, smoking, and eventual failure. And the filings noted the alleged defect could not readily be discovered because it was hidden inside those internal coatings. The hour numbers in those complaints are what stop you. The named plaintiffs said they followed the recommended maintenance and hit significant repair or replacement costs after as few as 380 hours. The lid plaintiff put 650 hours on his engine across 8 years and paid an invoice of just over $3,000. Another had a rotten exhaust tuner and a hole in the exhaust housing, and her engine overheated and quit at sea near Cape Lookout. Those are allegations in a complaint. Hold them as allegations. What I want you to look at is what came next, because that part is not in dispute in the same way. A kit was created to try to correct the problem, and no technical service bulletins and no recalls were issued regarding those motors. Sit with the shape of that. Somebody engineered a remedy. The remedy existed. The mechanism that would have told your mechanic the remedy existed did not. And then the argument that should make the hair stand up on the back of your neck because it is aimed directly at you, the second-hand buyer, standing on a dock with a checkbook. The defense position was that internal corrosion of exhaust components did not matter because the motors had been out of warranty for years, and that there was no duty to warn second-hand buyers of potential defects because there is no venue in which to do so. No venue in which to do so. You are the venue. You are the guy who buys the boat in year 8 with 400 hours on a motor that looks immaculate, and you are the one who eats a 4-figure bill for a casting you were never going to see. And the position taken on the record is that nobody owed you a word about it. I could not confirm how that litigation finally resolved, and I am not going to dress a guess up as a fact. It does not change the sentence. The sentence is the thing. Low hours, immaculate cowling, no warranty, no recall, no bulletin, no obligation. Which is why hours on a placard are worthless to you and dates on receipts are everything, and why the only leverage you will ever have is the leverage you bring with you. I think there is something in that worth naming, and it is not really about outboards. Every one of these 11 is a case of the important information having been separated from the object. The boat still knows what happened to it. The transom knows. The tank knows. The hull knows what water it sat in and how warm that water was. All of it is still physically there, recorded in the material, and the only thing standing between you and reading it is whether anybody ever taught you how. Nobody profits from teaching you. That is not a conspiracy. It is just where the money isn't. So the trade taught itself, hand to hand, the way trades always do. The tap test on a transom, the dipstick after the run, the date instead of the hours. None of it is difficult. A person can learn the whole set in a couple of Saturdays of walking docks and asking questions they already know the answer to, just to hear how sellers respond. And that is the thing worth having. Not a boat. The judgment. Judgment is the only asset in this that appreciates, and it is the only one nobody can sell you. So here is the procedure, in order, on your own numbers. Before you leave the house, get the year, the model, and the hull identification number. And if it is a documented vessel, order the abstract of title so it is in your hand before you drive anywhere. At the boat, feet first, walk the deck edges, stand beside every fitting, tap the transom, and put your hand on it while somebody trims the motor up. Then the flashlight into every space that is not part of the tour, under the gunnels, beneath the cushions, into the tank compartment if there is any access at all. You are looking for silt, for stains, for weeping rust at the riser joint, and for the smell of fuel. Then the paperwork, and one question that does more work than all the others. What is the date? Manifolds and risers, date. Bottom job, date, and how long it dried. Fuel tank, original or replaced. Impeller, date. Then the sea trial, at full throttle, watching temperature and tachometer, and the dipstick when you tie up. Then the arithmetic. Write down the asking price. Underneath it, write the deferred work that is genuinely due within 2 seasons, at real money, not optimistic money. Exhaust if it is a saltwater sterndrive. The tank if it is buried and old. The repower if the compression spread was wide. Add it up. Compare that total against 3 comparable boats with the work already done and the receipts to prove it. If your total is higher, you have not found a deal, you have found a project somebody else already priced correctly and decided to sell instead. And if you are not qualified to judge the structure, that is what a pre-purchase survey is for. Commonly $18 to $33 a foot, with most buyers budgeting $500 to $2,000 for a standard pre-purchase job before haul-out and engine work. On a boat where the failures I have described cost multiples of that, it is not really an expense. Here is what running that procedure buys you. And it is not a feeling. It is a bill that never arrives. Some Tuesday in your 3rd season, a man 2 slips down is going to be standing next to an open engine hatch with a shop invoice in his hand and a look on his face, and you are going to be putting your cooler on the dock and going out. And you will not connect the 2 things at all, because the whole point of a disaster you avoided is that it leaves no trace. That is the entire payoff. Nothing happens. Now I want the confession, and I am asking, honestly, what did you buy that you should have walked away from, and what did it cost you in the end? Not the near miss, the actual mistake, the one where you saw the thing, told yourself a story about it, and paid for the story 18 months later. Put the number in it if you can stand to. Those comments are the most useful thing on any video I make, because somebody reading them this weekend is standing in front of the exact boat you bought, and your bad afternoon saves their whole season. I read them. I read all of them, and I answer the ones I can actually help with. Subscribe if you want the rest of these as they come. And there is one thread I deliberately did not pull today, because it needs its own hour. What happens when a hull has been rebuilt in somebody's driveway and the identification number no longer means what you think it means? I keep running into it. I do not fully understand the paperwork yet, and I am working on it. Until then, check the dates, not the hours. Nobody on that dock is going to do it for you.